bringing people together in community. What I discovered in policing is that there are so many amazing people doing amazing things, right? Especially when they're dealing with so much trauma and, a lot of negative situations. But majority of people are just, looking for new creative ways to help other people. And we're a part of that. We're not the only solution, but we are part of that. And by working with the community, which I usually did, just saw the power of connecting with people. And looping this into being an author and a writer and a creator is that story was what connected us. Because when we started to share stories, when we started to share ideas, then you understood that, yes, we might have certain differences, but we shared a lot of similarities. And from that, when you're like at the table and you break bread with someone, then you find that connection and then you work that connection and then you just keep building and building on it. And I found that there were so many amazing experiences. There's so many people's lives that were impacted. And I kind of narrowed it down. I said, it's because of our ability to communicate to each other in a real, constructive and positive way. Now, it wasn't always perfect. There are moments that are challenging and difficult, but it was the connection and the community that was so important. And that's what I use a lot to drive my storytelling.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 432 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with A.L. Wahdel, a writer in the crime thriller genre who writes with energy about the city that shaped his identity. He brings Toronto's soul to life and chose his birthplace as the canvas for his crime series to honor the city's essence, celebrate its dynamism, and share the stories that only a true Torontonian writer could tell. Now, Lance and I talk about his first novel, Too Dark for the Light, which includes elements from his 20 years of experience in law enforcement. We talk about his police work, we talk about his writing, and above all, we talk about his passion to always be in a constant state of create. And that interview is coming up later in this episode, but first, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by my affiliate link to manuscriptreport.com. Manuscriptreport.com offers you incredible creative solutions. Not only offering you, once you upload your manuscript there, SEO optimized keywords, target audience information, genres and the percentage of each genre that's appropriate there, themes, ability to create a trope map, a whole bunch of information that will help you with optimizing your metadata listings for this book, including a very handy back of the book summary, a synopsis of the book, sales pitches to different target audiences, a press release that you can use, first draft of a dress release, ad copy templates, and more. You also get comparisons with recent best-selling books, what's similar, what's different about them. You also get a look at narrative crossroads with both books and movies so you can help for that target audience identify. For example, for my book, A Canadian Werewolf in New York, when I ran it through, one of the narrative crossroads was it said the Dresden Files meets The Hangover. And that is the perfect description for my book, A Canadian Werewolf in New York, which originally was published in 2016. And all these years later, I should say, I never even put those two together. And that's the kind of creative marketing help you can get from Manuscript Report. And you can check it out at manuscriptreport.com. You can follow the affiliate link over at starkreflections.ca, or you can use coupon code MARK5, MARK5, and get $5 off. Again, that's manuscriptreport.com, helping you with that oh so frustrating element of marketing your book. Skipping right to the personal updates. This is, well, I always say it's going to be brief, but is it ever really brief? I am going to bypass comments as I am delayed in getting this out. It is still Friday as I'm recording this, but I'm actually recording this the morning I'm releasing it. I normally like to get it done on Thursday. But the challenge is, with all of the unexpected travel that I had to do lately, I've been set back significantly, and so many different meetings. These are meetings related to my work with Draft to Digital, meetings with relation to work I'm doing as a writer, meetings with relation to consultations I have, as well as even interviewing folks for forthcoming episodes of this podcast. It's been insane, and I've been scrambling to keep my head above water, like always, but it just seems a little bit more chaotic lately. And also, I'm about to be doing some events in the next few weeks. So on Saturday, September 13th, in Burlington, Ontario, I'm going to be at DreadCon, which is the second annual horror-themed one-day conference. Really excited about that. It looks like it's twice the size that it was when it launched last year here in Waterloo, Ontario. Going to be closer to the Toronto area, bringing in probably more people who, there's lots of people who live in downtown Toronto who just kind of seem to refuse to want to leave. It's just too far away, an hour drive, or an hour and a half or 2 hours, depending on the traffic. But that's going to be really exciting. And then the following week, I'm going to be going with Draft to Digital. I'm going to be going to NINC. I'm going to be going to Novelist Inc. And I haven't been there in several years. I'm going to talk about that, try and do it briefly. And then I'm only back for a few days before I head off to Fan Expo in Salt Lake City, where Writers of the Future is sending me there. I'm going to be speaking on several panels, which is going to be a lot of fun. I'll talk about that in the future. But I do want to address something related to Novelist Inc. and going to Florida for this conference. Now, Novelist Inc. has been a phenomenal conference that I've loved, and I've never not loved the people related to NINC, and the people I connect with and have met over the years at NINC have enriched my life in profound, positive ways. But I remember being in a discussion with somebody when Florida, and Florida's continued to do idiotic, horrible, despicable, bigoted things that just disgust me. And for several years, I made a point of specifically not going to Florida, because Florida was a state where people that I care deeply about would not be safe, would feel at risk, and have been persecuted, and in standing with them. So me not going to Florida was me wanting to stand with them and say, okay, I have all the privilege, but you don't. And if you can't go there and be comfortable and feel safe, I'm not going either. And so why am I going this year? Why am I going in 2025? Well, the entire United States of America has become that disgusting cesspool of bigoted hatred. Now, I know this is not the case for every American. For sure, the majority of Americans are not this. And the majority of states I can't say that. The majority of Americans are good, kind, caring, loving people in general. Most Americans are not bigoted, racist assholes. However, the state of the country right now, and the federal government and everything that's going on, the entire country is as bad as Florida was. And again, Florida has, most of the people I know in Florida are amazingly awesome people. And I love them and I respect them. And I think they're fantastic. And the same goes for virtually almost every single American I know. There are exceptions. But most people that I know are kind, loving, caring, beautiful, compassionate people who, move things forward in terms of positivity, openness, and acceptance. But the entire U.S. is not in a good state. So I would be a complete hypocrite if I refused to go to Florida, but I don't refuse to go anywhere else in the States. And there are several reasons I will continue to travel to the States despite this. It's for the people. It's for the people I love and respect. For example, I travel for Writers of the Future, and they do a great job in promoting beginning writers and helping mentor and support them. And I love that. And I love that pay it forwardness. And so I will do events with them. I love the people at Draft to Digital. They are an amazing team of phenomenal people. They are my family, and they love supporting authors. And so I will do Draft to Digital things because I love and respect them so much, and the author community, of course. And then there are other conferences, and there are other things to go to, such as Superstars Writing Seminars is again family and home and tribe to me, and I love all of the people involved in Superstars. So I'm not going to not go to be with the people I love and respect and admire. So perhaps I may seem like a hypocrite, but I am choosing love and respect and supporting the author community. And that's why I'm continuing to travel to the U.S. It's also my subtle way of letting my American friends and family know that despite the horrible state that the federal leadership and some of the state leaders are pushing or forcing onto people, I'm still your friend, and I will still be here for you. And I think that's one of the most important things that you can say to another human being, is not only that I see and I acknowledge you and I respect you, but that I'm here for you, and I will not give up on you. I think that's an important thing to say. So, wow, I rambled for quite a bit longer on this personal update, but I need to understand that myself, but I also needed to express that specifically because I made such a point over the last several years of why I wasn't going to Novelists Inc. Again, it was not the people who I love and admire. It was not wanting to spend money in a place that is so hateful and disrespectful. But again, even looking at Florida, there's the disrespect and the hate and the utter, for no good reason, getting rid of the rainbow crosswalks. But I love seeing that the people in the community have stood up and said, no, we're going to put them back. And some of the cities, some of the communities have doubled down and made not just one crosswalk, but the entire whole block section rainbow, just to show that they stand. And so I want to be able to say I can stand wherever I stand, even if I go to the U.S. So anyways, I've rambled about that a bit long. The other personal update, and it's related to this interview when I talk with Lance Wahdel, some of the advice he's about to give in this interview is related to police work and, getting to know someone from the community. If you're writing in that genre and you want to write more realistically. Now, I have several different people I've been able to talk to and get advice from over the years on some of my police adjacent writing and law enforcement adjacent writing in some of my novels, particularly in my Canadian Werewolf series. But I've taken it to heart, and earlier this year I applied to get into the Waterloo Regional Police Service Citizens Police Academy, and I was accepted, and I'm so excited because it's lots of applications and it's limited. And these classes start, they're 12 weeks. They start the second week in September, and it's on a weeknight. And this is going to allow me as a community member to learn about the local police service, learn about the legal system, law enforcement, etc. And it's probably going to benefit me and potentially even give me some further context in the police force that can help make my writing more authentic, but also as a citizen help me better understand what it is that WRPS, what they do in the community. I mean, I do have anecdotes and stories from a friend who is an officer there, but I think that's going to be really valuable for me, and I'm so looking forward to that. That's it for my long rambling short personal update. All right, let us roll this bumper, and let us listen to the bumper, of course, and then listen to this wonderful conversation that I had with A.L. Wahdel. Hey, Lance, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me.
I'm so thrilled to chat with you. So we met in Toronto at the Toronto Indie Author Con, and it feels like a year ago now, but it was only a couple months ago, right?
Yeah, it's time has just kind of went right
Really
through
fast.
really
But
fast. Yeah,
but I was so excited when I saw your book. I saw your thriller and Too Dark for the Light.
yeah.
And then finding out that you wrote this police procedural kind of police life thriller based on, and I didn't know this about you until I think we were walking, a bunch of us were walking, like heading to where we were going, and I was going to where my car was parked, and you'd asked a couple very probing questions about, oh, did you whatever, because the CRV is the most stolen car in the North America, and did you do you have the lock on? It's like all this stuff, and I was like, what, are you a cop?
It was pretty technical. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like you knew a lot about the crime rate and everything. And I was like, okay, oh, now it makes sense why he wrote. So you are a police officer or a detective or you in the force somewhere, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I've been a police officer for 20 years and a lot of experience in 2 decades. But when you have all that experience, when conversations do come up, anything related to policing, usually those factoids jump out and, people go, "Oh, okay, you seem to know a lot," just like the experience I had with you.
Yeah. Well, I did fish the wheel lock out of my garage and I keep it in the CRV. But only
Good.
when I'm parked in certain areas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just about your comfort level, right? Wherever you go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I did get it. The car branded. My insurance company gave me a better. I've got the hidden tags and stuff for locating
Yeah,
the stolen vehicle.
that's a good
But
start.
why not have the extra, that extra 30 seconds, that extra 60 seconds that it would take them to have to break that additional lock might make them turn away from my car. So when I'm going to Philadelphia, I'll take it with me when I'm in the US.
Good idea.
So let's get into this. So I want to go. Let's start with the police work.
Mhm.
What drove you? What inspired you to want to get into that line of work?
Well, it wasn't initially my plan to get into policing. Prior to that, I studied graphic design and digital media design. I had aspirations to go on to a career in advertising, so I started out and I went to what they call Ryerson, but it's called TMU now.
Yeah, yeah.
I studied there, and then I went to the International Academy of Design, and I started really getting into the depths of, media arts. And I'm classically trained in Photoshop and Illustrator, so that was
Wow.
great. And I started a couple of companies, and I worked for a couple of companies, but then I needed some stability, and then I was just kind of doing some, personal deep diving and reflection. I said, you know what am I good at? What do I like to do? What do I enjoy? And ultimately, I came down to it. I said, well, I like helping people. I grew up with a mother who was very, very giving to the communities that she served. And I thought to myself, okay, let me see if I could manage this. Can I leverage my lived experience? Can I leverage this desire to help people? And it led me to policing. And when I did it, it opened my eyes and opened my world to a whole bunch of things. Not always negative. I know sometimes people ask, hey, man, you must have seen some pretty crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
But usually people don't ask, have you seen any amazing things? Beautiful things, right?
Right, well, let's talk about that. Let's go
Yeah,
for it. I was
yeah.
going to ask you some of those, but like, yeah, what's something, a beautiful story that you're able to share?
Well, it just comes down to the connections you have with people. And I mean, I think it goes back to when we were at the conference and, bringing people together in community. What I discovered in policing was that there are so many amazing people doing amazing things, right? Especially when they're dealing with so much trauma, a lot of negative situations. But majority of people are just, looking for new creative ways to help other people. And we're a part of that. We're not the only solution, but we are part of that. And by working with the community, which I usually did, I was focused on being a community officer. And I did that for a long time. And I just saw the power of connecting with people. And, looping this into, being an author and a writer and a creator is that story was what connected us. Because when we started to share stories, when we started to share ideas, then you understood that, yes, we might have certain differences, but we shared a lot of similarities. And from that, when you're like at the table and you break bread with someone, then you find that connection and then you work that connection and then you just keep building and building on it. And I found after, 2 decades of work that there were so many amazing experiences. There's so many people's lives that were impacted. And I kind of narrowed it down. I said, it's because of our ability to communicate to each other in a real, constructive and positive way. Now, it wasn't always perfect. There are moments that are challenging and difficult. I think that's for another podcast, but
Yeah.
it was the connection and the community that was so important. And that's what I use a lot to, drive my storytelling.
Right. Well, speaking of the connection, speaking of the community, there's a log line that you use for your author brand. I can see it over your right shoulder as
Yeah,
well
that's it.
and I saw that on your website, and I think I saw it in your signature of your email, and I see it there. So that's obviously an important sentence statement. Are you willing to share that for the audio listeners here?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we're here to do is to share as much as we can. When you're thinking about, what you do, what your purpose is, what is driving you, I always feel that, people thought like personal brand only had to relate to like an athlete or a celebrity. But I find that personal branding actually can just relate to yourself. It doesn't have to be something put on a billboard or displayed everywhere. So as I'm thinking about, what gets me excited, what wakes me up in the morning, what kind of gives me that purpose. So by doing that, I said, well, I'm a creative person. I enjoy creativity. I love the creative arts. I love to see people create and come up with new ideas. And as I'm, churning and going through ideas, I said to myself, well, I always want to be constant with my creativity. I always want to come up with new ideas, try something new. And then one day, when I'm just going through iterations, it just hit me. Always be in a constant state of create. And there it is.
Yeah.
It just hit me. And I wrote it down. I looked at it every which way. I passed it off to some really good friends, and it just stuck and it resonated with me. And I'm just building it up right now and trying to understand it because you might come up with a tagline or you might come up with an idea, but things change, your ideas change, your viewpoints on things change. So it's an ever evolving process. But I always said, always be in a constant state of create, like being in the moment, creating and respecting it and understanding it, because it's going to take you to some place that's amazing if you just let it and you go with it.
I love that. And I also, I'm imagining scholars in the future, writers looking for inspirational quotes on Goodreads or some other website, and there's going to be a picture of you, maybe in front of the Toronto cityscape, and it's going to have that quote, A.L. Waddell, right?
I hope so. If you can make it happen,
Kind of like a
Mark,
Toni
please.
Morrison quote, a Stephen King quote, something like that. It's like bam, there you go. It's like, oh, I love that. So,
Well, that's great. Yeah, if it can inspire anybody, if it could, make people think about how they can be creative, I mean, that's the purpose of it, right? My intentionality is just anytime I create something, it's an offering, right? It's a giving
yeah,
to the world, right? Doing
yeah.
service, right?
So let's go back to so we talked about how you got into law enforcement. So this state of wanting to create, you've known that about yourself, but how did that lead to writing? And is writing something you'd always wanted to do, or is that something you came to discover as a way to express that creativity?
Well, well, for your audience, I'm gonna break a rule that you and Maddie had in the book. I'm gonna break it, and we're gonna do it right now.
You break the rule.
It's
You go ahead. I think you can get away with it.
I think I can get away with it. It was that, don't start off saying I always wanted to be a writer when I was young, right?
Yeah.
But actually I did
Yeah.
in an unconventional way. You see, I wanted to be a recording artist. I wanted to be a rap musician.
Okay. All right.
In the
Okay.
early 90s, when I was young, my cousin and I, we used to hang out a lot and we used to write lyrics. And I would write all day, just writing
So
music.
you were
Just,
writing rap lyrics.
yes, writing rap
Okay.
lyrics, just writing, writing. I was very young, I was a teenager at the time, and I was just, producing all these lyrics and all this music. Now, I'm going to say this now. I did not continue that career. My cousin did, and he actually had a quite a successful career.
Really?
He carried on, but I went in the complete
Did he
opposite
ever take
direction.
any of your lyrics, or did he?
That's a great question. I'm sure it was inspiring to him because later on in life, as we've gotten a little older and we're sitting down kind of, thinking about and growing up and reflecting about our youth, he did say to me, he said, "You were so prolific and you were so inspirational to me." And it was such a great moment because I didn't hear that during the whole time. But
Yeah.
when we were actually being able to conversate over that, he said, "Yeah, it was your writing. You just had this drive to write." So that was happening when I was a teenager. I didn't continue in the career. I didn't continue in that profession, but I knew something was laying dormant in there. Right? Now, obviously, I'm a big fan of reading. I love my comic books. I share the same uh, a same desire as you when it comes to reading comics. Just a caveat, I am a Batman fan, not a Spider-Man fan.
Fair enough. We can still be friends.
We can still be friends. DC versus Marvel.
They're both
Let's go.
orphans, right?
That's right, exactly. So, so when I was doing all that writing, I kept it and I held on to it. And it's in a box somewhere. There's nobody will ever see it. But when I look back now, I think it was just a sequence of events. And I think that's just how life happens. Certain
Right.
things interrupt you, right? They don't disturb you, but they interrupt you. And I look back and I said, well, yeah, of course I've always been a writer, but I've also been a reader too. So, as I progressed along, there was one moment, and I'm just going to bring it back to comic books again, is that I was doing a community program with youth, and it was focused on the arts, and I was encouraging youth to, you know, express themselves through artistic endeavors and creation. And then I thought to myself, you know what? I always wanted to make a comic book. So me being the type of person I am, I deep dived into it. I started reading all the books on penciling, inking, story, you name it. I went into it, but I discovered one important thing. I don't know how to draw. Even though, even though I'm proficient with Photoshop and Illustrator, I just couldn't draw. But I was telling stories, I was writing them down. And then another sequence of events happened. About halfway through my policing career, I went back to university to grab a few more courses, and it was in communications. And I'm in this writing course, and I end up doing a paper on Rita Hayworth's Shawshank Redemption, the novella by Stephen King.
Phenomenal
Right.
novella.
Right, exactly. And I actually like the movie too. And please, nobody,
No,
go
honestly,
after
it's a
me.
fantastic adaptation. It really
Yeah.
is. It's an authentic, heartfelt adaptation, like Misery was, like some of
Yes,
the films.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So after writing that, I looked at the paper and I said to myself, I said, again, here it is. This is another moment. This is something telling you that you should be writing. And
Mm.
then I said, okay, well, I'm not going to do comic books. Who knows? Maybe one day, Mark, it'll happen. If
Yeah.
it does, that's great. But I said, okay, I could write a book. And then I remember this line. I have no idea who said it. And I wish I did at the moment. I wish I wrote it down. But it said, write what you know. And I said, okay, well, I'm in the middle of this career. I know this. I'm going to write about this. And then I just started to iterate and come up with ideas and plots and characters. And it just went from there. And then that's how I discovered everyone in this community, including yourself. Cobra Writing Life, right? Self-publishing show, Joanna Penn, Six-figure authors with Lindsay Baroker. The list goes on. And I was just consuming everything because I needed to know. I needed to understand this industry because that's how I operate. I
Right.
want to get into like the nitty-gritty of everything. And by doing that, it sent me to so many different paths and avenues. I mean, even to like the Rebel podcast with Sasha there, like stuff like that. Like I was just, my mind was blown. And I said, here are all these amazing people doing all these cool things, and they're sharing it with everyone. The books are there, all the tips, how to run a book funnel, how to, set up a mailing list, a website. What does that mean? Converging with technology. And I said, I think I have found my community. And, and it's an amazing feeling when, and just for your listeners, when you have that feeling when you're in a group of individuals and you know that, okay, I'm connecting with everyone. But here's the interesting part is that I'm connecting with everyone through podcasts, through YouTube, and through the books. And there you go. It doubles down on the whole idea that when you create something, you're sending it out to the universe. You're sending it out to everybody. It's a gift to everybody. So I looked around, I said, I'm developing my mastermind group here. And including you, Mark, you were in that group. And I was looking and studying as much as I could to get as much information as I could. And that was like what fueled my desire to write. I was saying, okay, well, I want to replicate. I want to create my own voice and carve out my own path in this publishing industry.
That's fantastic. I love that you were such a sponge and you were absorbing so much of what was put out there. And then, so the novel, Too Dark for the Light, is the first Walter Cascade
Yeah,
police
yeah,
procedure.
Water Cascade.
Oh, Water Cascade. Sorry, you know
Yeah,
what? My old eyes.
that's okay. It
Water
trips people up.
Cascade. Oh my God, Water. Wait, is Water Cascade the name of the character? Or is Water Cascade? Because that sounds lovely. This like with this heat wave we're experiencing.
Yes, and for anyone, please read the book, and hopefully you can get a nice wave of fresh air. But
Yeah.
yeah, his the main character there is Detective Sergeant Water Cascade.
Oh my God, I love that name. Even better because Walter's standard, but Water Cascade is so cool. So this is kind of like Hieronymus Bosch, Michael Connolly, Harry Bosch. It's kind of
Yes.
like, oh yeah, you have a name that everyone's going to make fun of, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? And I think that's just the lore of storytelling, right? Is if you could find like a cool creative name that's not too overbearing, but something that's a little unique, why not go for it? Take a
Yeah.
chance.
So let's talk about this novel. This is the first novel in the Water Cascade series, not Old Man Eyes who misread that. But and this is a police procedural set, and I love that you can see the CN Tower on the cover.
That's
So
it,
tell us a little
Toronto.
bit about like the genesis of this novel and what it explores.
Well, let's just jump back to what I said earlier about write what you know, right? And as I'm doing that, I'm thinking about, all the aspects of policing that I understand and all the relationships and connections I've made over the years. And I looked around and I said, okay, where's the representation for the city that I grew up in and the city that I love and I enjoy being in and around? And I didn't find as much. I mean, there are fantastic authors, amazing, incredible creators out there in this space in Toronto, and they're doing amazing things. But I said to myself, I said, okay, I could get a voice here. I could get in here with my own characters, my own ideas. And I just immersed myself in understanding the dynamics of the city. Of course, being a resident, and of course, living there and traveling there, you get an aspect of it, you get to feel. Then I said, okay, well, I want to create a story. So, and I want it to be set here. And through some, popular groups online, a lot of people said, don't write Canada, don't write about Canadian stuff, see if you could write about American or somewhere else. But I said no. I said absolute no. I entertained the idea for a moment, but then I said no because write what you know, which is fine. That might not be for everyone, but that was for me. And I
Right.
loved my city and I loved the stories and I loved the culture. I loved the ability to be able to go to all different parts of the world. I love the diversity. And I said, I want to put this into my book. Obviously, it's a police procedural, a little bit of crime noir, crime fiction, crime thriller, but I want to tell it in Toronto, nowhere else. And of course, I'll incorporate other areas, but it's a based in Toronto. And that's why I decided to put the skyline on the front of the cover because I just want to make that bold statement that this story is from Toronto and it's from Canada.
I love it. So what's the inciting incident of this novel? What's the
Well, Detective Sergeant Water Cascade, he's just about to retire. And then, of course, a young officer asked for some help. And, by sticking his neck out and saying, okay, no problem, I'll help you out, he gets pulled into a covert operation that takes him in so many different directions. And with that being said, he finds out that there's a lot of corruption and he wants to go after it. So I'll leave it at that. I'll if anyone's interested, they could go ahead and read. But that's the inciting incident there.
So that's meant to be, I guess, book one in a series. You have more stories with water.
Absolutely. Working on book two, number two right now. And it's actually interesting because when I started the series, I actually wrote a book further along. But when I sent it to a beta reader, they had asked for more backstory. So
Wow.
I actually went back a bit and I said, you know what, let me get right to the origins, right? Kind of like the comic book thought process came into mind.
Yeah,
And I said,
yeah.
okay, let me go right back. And then when I went further and I, gave the beta reader that book again, they said, yes, that's it. That's it right there. Please
Wow.
start from here. Right. So that's the whole process I'm in. But yeah, I have book two, and book two will be coming out in fall of this year.
Okay. Wow.
And we'll just be working on the characters and seeing where it takes us and see what happens to Detective Sergeant Water Cascade.
It reminds me of a story that I'm very fond of, and it's the power of an editor or beta reader or whatever. And it
Hmm.
is the story of Harper Lee, who sent the novel Go Set a Watchman to
Mm.
her editor, and her editor said, "Wow, there's a really good backstory here. Atticus is a jerk, and her and his daughter, who admired him so much, is he's fallen from grace in her eyes because she realizes who he really is, but
Hmm.
she worshipped him so much. I want to see the story of her as a child worshiping him. Could you write that?"
Right. Yes.
So Harper Lee went back and wrote, To Kill a Mockingbird. And I mean, Atticus
Classic.
Finch is a hero in that story. But then you realize that that was her tainted view as a child. And then when you read, like, I mean, it broke my heart to see who he was.
Hmm.
But because, you kind of, I've always held him up in high regard. We named one of our cats after Atticus Finch before reading Ghost of the Watchmen. But anyways, but it reminds me of that. Like, so you had this story, and then someone's like, no, I want to see, like, go back to the beginning. I love that sort of that element of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a great feeling. It kind of showed me that I'm on the right track here.
Yeah. So so Water is about to retire. And so I'm curious about some of the elements in the novel that are based on actual things you know about policing, as
Hmm.
opposed to, we all know, we turn on the TV, we watch movies, there's this Hollywood version.
Yes, there is a Hollywood version.
Like, I think I really enjoy The Rookie. I think it's got great writing and stuff, but you really have to suspend your disbelief to think that they would put rookies in this, repeatedly put them in precarious situations. But like, knowing that as a viewer, I'm like, I don't care. It's a lie,
Right.
but I still like it. So I'm curious if you made any decisions in the novel to say, I know it's really like this, but the reader or the tropes are expected to do this, even though that's not real, and they'll forgive me, or was there elements where you had to fight with what you really know?
Absolutely, there was, and I love the reference to the rookie because that is very, it does have some basis in how policing is, right? And it's good for half an hour television, but
Yeah,
yeah, it was a tricky balance. There are many moments in policing where just certain times there's downtime because it's a could be a very reactive profession, right?
yeah,
In the shows, it's boom, 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 right off. Next scene, cut, right? Go, go, go.
yeah.
to translate that into a novel, that's why my novels are a little shorter. And because I wanted to get right to it, right? You can't necessarily take every single moment of what a police officer actually does and put that into a book.
Yeah.
It would be longer than The Stand, right? So,
It would be more like the sit because you're stuck in the
yes,
squad car. Wait, do you guys call it the
absolutely.
shop? Is it the shop?
The shop, no, well, it depends on what part of the world you're in. Everyone
Okay.
has that different
A
terminology,
different
right?
term. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
different terms, right? But yeah, it's tricky because you want to be authentic. You want to give the reader a little glimpse into, the day-to-day life, and especially for a completely fictional story. You want to entertain and you want to keep the reader engaged and going from beat to beat to beat and making
Right.
sure that they feel it and they're like, okay, what's going to happen next? Okay, I want to read this chapter tonight, but I got to go to bed. You want to do that. And sometimes you can't describe every hour of a
Yeah.
police officer's day. Right? So you really, really work on the story and you also really work on character development and the
Okay.
interactions the characters have because, as long as you have that conflict driving the story, you're going to keep the reader hooked, right? And then you
Right.
could throw in a couple of nuggets of, yeah, this is kind of what we do, mundane tasks or
Yeah.
things that are
The
just,
paperwork, the
yes, yeah, note taking, because note taking is huge. You have to take a lot of notes. You have to
yeah.
make sure you record a lot of stuff. So, you don't really have to mention all that and go into an entire chapter about it. Mind you, if you do, that's okay. If that's your
Yeah.
genre or niche, please go ahead. But I decided that I found a good balance between the both.
So the note taking, I'm curious about the note taking because I'm assuming that the note taking is for when you're writing up reports at the end of the day or the end of the shift or the end of whatever when you
Right.
finally and you're like, oh, I think I'm done. Nope, I've got
Yes.
to type this up. I know it's not on typewriters on mimeograph forms anymore, but it's probably computerized now. But the note taking is potentially also something that you may leverage if you have to testify, right? That you have multiple sources of points from the day of that you can refer to. But what I'm curious, was I wrong about those, or is
No,
that
no,
somewhere
you're
close to the
no,
truth?
you're right. You're right. Right on point there.
So I'm curious about your note-taking skills as a police officer and how your note-taking skills as an author, how they coincide.
Well, I have to admit that, policing has rewarded me in so many different ways. Writing reports, I have done a lot of them. And you'll speak to any police officer from any part of the world, and they will tell you, yes, we write a lot. Now, that cannot be fiction. It has to be the truth, the absolute truth, and observations. But what it did teach me, though, is to understand the sequencing of events and how important it is, especially when you're taking notes. It's so important that you be very accurate, to the point, and very direct. Now, when you're writing, sometimes you have to write really fast so your thoughts really go. I've been able to take that and use that in my writing because, let's quote Dean Wesley Smith there, writing into the dark. Sometimes you just have to go. You have to write and you have to keep going, keep going, keep going. And then you tidy it up after, right?
Yeah,
And you can do the same thing with both, right? But you just want to get that quick idea. Like, when you have that moment where you have that idea and you don't write it down and you forget it later,
yeah.
you don't want that to happen. But because, writing notes and doing lots of reports, you have to be instant, right? So I use that skill set for when I'm writing and kind of coming up with ideas.
So I'm curious as well about another skill that's really valuable and really important for writers, and it's observational skills. And I imagine
Mhm.
as an officer, you have to be attending to details that most people don't see. I'm assuming, like when you
Absolutely,
walk into a
yes.
situation, you're paying attention to things that people don't even realize that you're actually watching.
Yes,
Does that come
that's
into play?
that's very accurate. When we do train, we are very cognizant of our surroundings, right? We have to always have our head on a swivel, as they say, 360 degrees, paying attention to, who's over there, where's the door, where's my this, fill in the blank, right? You
Yeah,
just have to constantly be alert. And that also helps me because now when I'm thinking of stories and I'm just observing, because speak to any police officer and they'll tell you that there's a lot of observation. Like we're watching constantly, we're looking around. And through that, we get to see how people interact with each other, how people interact with the environment, how people go from point A to point B. And you could see all the different aspects of, humanity, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, well, if I'm going to describe a scene in my book or whatever I'm creating, now you have something to reference, right?
Yeah.
Because you've just seen so many different things, right? So I've been able to translate that into something useful when it comes to my writing and what I create. Because
Yeah.
you could watch thousands of people in any given day, depending on where you are, and you'll
Yeah.
see all the nuances, the
Yeah.
different ticks, the things that make us go.
Oh man. Love that. Is there, I mean, as somebody who is in the profession and has been doing it for 20 years, what are some of the things that authors get wrong? I know Hollywood gets a lot wrong, but what are some of the things that you've seen that authors are consistently getting wrong that probably annoys you and maybe, fellow coworkers? You're like, oh my God, why do they make this assumption?
Well, there's a couple of things that when I first started reading, when I did become a police officer, I started reading books and just watching TV. Yep, your mind starts to change and you say, that's impossible. That can never happen. We don't do it that way. But I don't mind it now as much as I did before. And I think most writers, if not all, are making a good effort to get it accurate. But then there's also an expectation for anyone that's consuming, books or reading, that they're expecting to hear or see a certain thing. And I understand, I totally get it if you just have to like say, okay, yep, I'm gonna rack it, or I'm gonna slam the brakes and all these things, right? I get it, I understand. However, when you do it, just make sure that you're not embellishing it too much, right? Here's one tip. Find someone who's in law enforcement, which many authors do, and strike up a relationship with them, right? Um, you can speak to police officers when you see them around. Just say hello. Just understand what the interaction is. Now, you're not going to get every single detail upon the first interaction saying hi, but you can just see how the dynamic is. And if you're writing stories about police officers, understand that we all have conflict. We all have difficulties, and to really hone in on that because conflict drives story, as many experts say, and it's true. And unfortunately, there is conflict in everyone's lives. Police officers do go home to a life that's not policing, and that also intersects with the job that they're doing, right? So
Right.
pay attention to those areas too, because I think that could really, give your story an extra boost. And the movies and the books that I find that really nail it, that really get it, is when they show that other side, right?
Right.
Not just the fast cars, not just all the cool stuff or whatever. It's the downtime, the friend that they're hanging out with, the family event that they have to go to, and to see what the pressure is from the job they're doing and how it weighs in on their personal life. All
Right.
right. So that's just something for, for your listeners or anyone out there who's thinking about writing about policing.
Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
often when you're working somewhere and you've released a book,
Mhm.
your coworkers find out about it and they pick it up. And how has that interaction been with people? I mean, have some of your coworkers is like, "Oh, you've written a novel? I want to read it." And you're like, "No, no, don't." Or how's that experience been?
Well, I'll let you in on something really cool. And this is for you and your listeners is that, well, right now, because I write under my pen name, it is not common knowledge. Not everyone knows that I'm actually an author of this book.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
And the reason why I have it set up that way or have it like I didn't want to necessarily tell everybody because I want it to happen organically. And I understand, when you publish a book, you want to, get it out there. You want to, make sure you have everything set up, everything perfect. It happens. But for me, I want it to happen organically. Now, what I mean by that is this, is that I know that I could leverage my employer and say, well, I am this and I write this book. but I want to make sure that I am the writer first. I am the author, I am the creator first. And I want to still maintain the level of professionalism. So I'm going to say, okay, well, I am A.L. Waddell. I'm releasing this book, but I'm not going to leverage my employer so that I could sell that book. If
Right.
that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure that,
Yeah.
I don't have any, compromising situations, but I know eventually it will come out and I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with that and I don't mind that at all.
I see. But you're keeping a separation of church and state there.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yes, that's a good way to frame it.
All right. So this book came out, was it just like in the last few months?
Yeah, it was released in February. Working on it for a long time. Like I
Okay.
mentioned earlier, I had to go back and release it in February. And so far, I'm really enjoying the process. This is exactly what I imagined it to be. And I like the feeling of knowing that you have something creative out in the world for
Right.
just strangers to pick up and read.
And it's available in ebook, it's available in trade paperback. Any other editions?
Yeah, so ebook, trade paperback, and all the major popular retailers. And right now, we're currently working on the audiobook. So I'll see where that takes me, and hopefully we should have it by the end of the year. And maybe book two, I'll do the audiobook for that as well.
Now you have a really amazing voice. Is that potentially something where you're gonna do the narration for the audiobook?
Well, Mark, you've inspired me, so maybe we'll see.
All right. Awesome. All right. So as we get close to the end, Lance, so any other you went out there and listened to all these amazing, you mentioned Joanna Penn and Sasha Black and Lindsay Broker and all these awesome folks out in the industry that you learned from. As an author who's done it, who's absorbed all this information, you've got your first book out, the second book's forthcoming later this year. What's advice that you would love to share to the little Lances out there who are doing what you had done when you were absorbing information? Some information you say, I'd love to endow this wisdom, this understanding, this knowledge upon you. I bequeath it to you.
Absolutely. Well, I would start off by this. Obviously, collect as much information and knowledge as you can. Study the masters. There's so many people out there that are just willing to help you. Reach out to them or read their books, podcasts, YouTube. Take lots of notes. However, just one thing I always say though, you can take all the notes and learn all the things, but if you don't take action, you're never going to really move the dial on what you want to accomplish. And that's to publish your book and get it out to the world. So, yeah, you've acquired all these great ideas. You have your story, but you have to go and put it out there. Take action, do something about it, whether it's giving it to someone to read, whether it's selling it, do something. Because a lot of times what happens is that we get so consumed about collecting all the perfect data, right? Having everything all set. I'll admit, I don't have everything perfect right now, but my intention is to get to a place where everything is working smooth and efficiently. But it will take time because every day I wake up, there's always something new happening. And with our technology and the way it's going so fast. And you're thinking, oh, well, I got to do this now. Oh, I have to create that now. And it could be overwhelming. So, with all that, also slow it down. I made the mistake of going a little too fast, too quick in the beginning. And I wanted to do this and do that and have all these things happening at once. And it was a little too time consuming, depending on, where your life is. I had two young kids at the time, so I am, you know, my time is being pulled away, but I understood that, okay, maybe I could separate things, slow it down. I have the information, I have the knowledge, and then you have to eventually take action, right? And when you do take action, it's an incredible feeling. You speak to any author or any creator, once you put something out into the world for people to have and to appreciate and to love, and when they return that and say, "Hey, I really enjoyed what you made and what you created," such an amazing feeling. So just take action.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, could you please share with my listeners where they can find out more about you and your book online?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me online at alwaddellauthor.com. That's my website. That's where I share updates, events, and behind the scenes content. I also write a weekly column on Substack called A Constant State of Create, like we spoke about earlier. and it's where I explore creativity, writing, and the indie journey. I'm also active on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook, so feel free to connect me there. And if you purchase Too Dark for the Light, you can get it on Kobo and all major retailers. It's available everywhere. And I would be hard pressed not to mention, and I'm going to say this and double down for all the listeners, please ask for it at your local independent bookstore or go into your library. Supporting them helps this community thrive and keeps us alive. And please just go in, walk in, and say, hey, can I get this book? If they say no, go to the next one. I keep going because our independent bookstores and libraries, they need us and we need them.
Awesome. You couldn't have spoken to my heart more deeply than you just did.
Uh,
Thanks
we
so much.
share we share the same thing, Mark. I love it.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
No problem, Mark. Thanks for having me, and thank you again.
First thing I want to reflect on from this conversation was Lance's motivation to get into the police service. And Lance said, I like helping people. And that really hit home with me. That really spoke to my heart. And it's kind of funny because yesterday, so on Thursday, September 4th, it was a last minute thing. Jim Azevedo from Draft to Digital was going to be doing a catch-up live, self-publishing Insiders Live with Draft to Digital with Dale L. Roberts. And sort of, I think the last time Dale had been there, I watched the interview, and I think sometimes I'm in the back room supporting the interview. But at the end of the interview, I popped into the green room, and during the postmortem, to say, "Hey, Dale, how's it going? Good to see you." And then Jim said, "Dale's wondering if you're going to pop into the green room." So I did, 5 minutes before broadcast, and then we just decided that the three of us would do the interview, even though Jim's the one who prepared everything. But it was just sort of a conversation catching up with Dale. But in any case, in that conversation, we talked about Dale's motivation for self-publishing with Dale L. Roberts, and it came down to that actually for all three of us, and it was so funny. I listened back to this interview I did with Lance from a few months ago, and he says, I like helping people. I want to help people, and that's what Dale's motivation was. And I realized that's a good part of what my motivation is. Lance drove that home as well, because later in the interview he talked about wanting to be a sponge and absorb as much information as possible, and getting stuff from Joanna Penn and Sasha Black and Lindsay Broker and so many other amazing people in the industry. He included that he was actually listening to some of the stuff that I was doing as well. But it was a reminder to me, because I do struggle. This podcast is a lot of work, and again, I've only been doing it for 8 years, but every single Friday, and I guess I've been podcasting longer because I used to do the Kobo Writing Life podcast, but this podcast, I do get amazing support from my patrons as well, which really help to fund some of the things I love to give back to the community, and obviously the paying obviously for the service, the server space for getting this podcast out. But definitely it doesn't even, and again, I'm not complaining, but it doesn't even come close to paying for the time I put into this podcast. I put in so many hours of time. It's probably, I'd say if I had to guess, I'd probably put in a good solid 8 hours a week on the podcast. Now, it's not per episode, but what's happening is every week I'm doing some interviews. I'm doing, and not just the interviews, but it's the back and forth and finding the people and the discussions and even curating, because I get pitched by so many people, and it takes time. I try to read all the pitches. I don't read all of them. Some of them just go right to spam. I never see them. Some of the pitches I see, sometimes I consider, and then I have to look into what value is this interview going to bring me, and remind people this is not a place where you're going to sell your book, right? Being on my podcast, it's a podcast for writers, so unless your book's for writers, chances are it's not going to sell a book for you. So if that's your motivation, don't waste your time with me unless you want to have a discussion that could potentially be valuable for writers, because that's what I'm looking for, is that value. But I do put a lot of energy into it, and my motivation is I love sharing. I love wanting to help other writers, and potentially there are people who listen to this podcast who get some value, right? They get to hear Lance's story and his passion for creativity, and even some details of police work that can help, make their writing better or more authentic or realistic. And it benefits them. And I know I'm never going to hear from, 99% of them. But, just in that discussion, recognizing that some of the content that I'd put out there, Lance had put to good work, good use. And so that was really cool. And I think it stems back to us as authors when we release books. And we know we've sold a lot of books. You can see your sales, but you go, but I only have X number of reviews. Why is that? Like a fraction of a percent of the readers have left reviews. And it's the same sort of thing. It's like, people are liking it, I guess, because they keep buying this stuff. But it's that imposter syndrome that we all have. It's like, it's nice every once in a while just to hear something. And I think I saw this on Instagram, and I reshared it as a story. But it was a post that was basically to the essence of, if somebody has done something that you admire, you appreciate, you like, you respect, or whatever, it's really important to take the time to let them know, because we often don't take the time to let people know that we like this. Even it's a small thing. Hey, I love that hat. That looks great. It doesn't have to be anything major. It can just be a small thing, because everyone, when you think about how hard you are on yourself and the imposter syndrome you probably have, it never hurts to have somebody say something nice to you. Lance talked in the interview again about, people always ask, you must see some pretty horrible things, right? Some crazy stuff. But what about the good stuff? There's lots of amazing and beautiful things that you see in any line of work, right? Even if it's in, trauma response and police enforcement or law enforcement and all the things, right? There's always the good, there's always the beautiful, there's always the positive that you can see. And I think if we can take the time anywhere in our day to just let people know, that we liked what they did or we appreciate what they did, I think that's a really cool thing. So all that is to say is that it's those little bits where I sometimes get a note from someone, or I'm talking to somebody like Lance, and they mention that they did enjoy or found value in the interview or the content or whatever it was, that can actually strengthen my resolve to keep doing this. So, and again, I keep doing this intrinsically because I like helping people. But I also think that's a motivation for the writing we do. Do you like the writing that you're doing? And I think that's an important aspect as well. The last thing, and I know this is a long reflection, but hey, what are you going to do? Lance talked about taking notes and absorbing information only, and just keep doing that, versus taking notes and then taking action. And that's a really difficult thing. Particularly, it's sometimes harder if you've never done it before. Like if you're just writing, you've just begun writing, and you haven't put that out into the world. That is terrifying. And it gets easier over time. But a lot of times we spend too much time reflecting or analyzing, and this can lead to analysis paralysis. It's like, oh my God, I have all this information and I don't know what to do. Am I going to publish my book exclusively to Amazon? Am I going to publish my book wide? Am I going to learn how to do Facebook ads? Am I going to learn how to do Amazon ads? How much am I going to spend on the ads? Where am I going to go? It's like, this is too much. I'm not going to do any of it, right? So trying to be perfect, that's the old adage, perfect is the enemy of done. Trying to be perfect can actually prevent us from moving forward. And that's where we get that panic, we get that freeze. I'm not saying put out things that are, not as great as they can be made, but I could always go back to the very first book I ever wrote, and I could keep rewriting it, and I could keep tweaking it. But that's not going to move me forward. You kind of like say, okay, this is good. I've worked at it really hard. I've put a lot of blood, sweat, tears into it. I think this is way better than it was when I first started. Yes, it can always be better. but I need to move on, because if I'm not putting stuff into the world, like Lance said, when you put stuff out into the world, when you create things, that's a gift to the world. That's a gift to the universe. And that's something really beautiful that I'm talking to you, that's something beautiful that you can do. So if you are creating things and you haven't yet put it out into the world, just remember that you're withholding that gift of something really powerful that you've created that can be shared. And whether it's one person, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people, a dozen, whatever it is, putting that out in the world is a beautiful gift. And you have beautiful gifts to give to the world. So I just want to remind you of that. If you're a little bit nervous and you're a little bit scared, chances are that thing that you create is probably going to impact someone else in a positive and potentially powerful way. And that is a beautiful thing. And that is really one of the things I love so much about Lance's philosophy, about creation, about community, and about connections. So thank you for listening to my rambling reflection. Thank you for listening to this amazing interview with A.L. Wahdel. There'll be links in the show notes at starkreflections.ca as to what we mentioned, as well as a link. We also did a special little thing. I thought I'd do it as a teaser. I'm not that organized. I should have put this teaser out earlier. This is a teaser to the interview where we thought, okay, where do they get some of the police things wrong on TV shows? So it's like a 5-minute clip. And that's a YouTube video, and that'll be posted. And I'll include the link in the show notes when that gets posted live. So you can get a little bit more of Lance, which I think will be fun. It's just more of a fun thing, and it's more of a fun teaser for the full amazing interview. Thanks again for listening, and a huge thank you to my patrons who support this podcast at patreon.com/starkreflections, as well as my coffee buddies over at buymeacoffee.com/Mark Leslie. I do have some special treats and special bonus interviews, etc. coming up with some interviews, and again, backlogged so far, to offer my patrons and my coffee buddies a little bit of extra support there. And that is it for this episode. If you want to support the episode, and again, financial support is great, but the support that you can give is leaving comments or letting me know what you like about the episode. I love hearing your reflections on what you're thinking about when you listen to the various episodes and interviews. And another way you can support the podcast, of course, is leaving a review and or sharing this episode or any episode of the podcast with someone that you think would find value in it. So, as I said, that is it for this episode. Until next week, and until next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.